Yeah, looking forward to the questions.
Okay, so today we have 4 questions. So I'll start with the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, question number 1. When you create a custom healing abutment in-house, do you create them like ready-made products, considering each teeth size? And where do you get the screw from? Because the screw must fit into the implant body, right?
Yeah, correct. So basically, you would be using your prosthetic screw, which of course any implant system will have. It would be, whatever implant system you use, I'm sure you'll have some sort of prosthetic screw. So it will be no different to that. That's basically the screw that you use. I have them basically pre-made. I actually make them in whole batches, and then on the day, I will basically choose the one that I feel is the best fits, and then I'll use that specific one. So yeah, I actually pre-make them in advance rather than make them on the day. And then on the day, I get to choose which one that I feel is, the closest size that I want it to be.
So maybe it's like anterior, posterior,
Yeah,
molar.
and so I mean, depending on the software that you use, if you use a program like Anatomic Profile Generator, which you can get for free online, they come in all shapes and sizes, and for posterior teeth,
Mm,
anterior teeth, and of course, because this is 3D printed resin, essentially, if you need to adjust or add remove material to these printed collars or abutments, then you can do that with your standard flowable composite. They will bond to these printed healing abutments. So that's the magic, I guess, of
mm,
having them all pre-made rather than, in the traditional sense, you would have a temporary cylinder, you'd isolate it with some sort of rubber dam, flow composite resin, and then carefully take everything out without
yeah.
disrupting any graft material, and then polish it. Whereas if you have something pre-made, most of the work is already done. You just need to shape it to how you want it to be.
But sometimes you shape them, right, with a burr.
Mm.
Uh-uh.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
Mm,
absolutely. Very easy to
mm,
do it.
yeah. I just wonder, what about the connection part? Is it okay to make it in-house?
Okay, so you can have two ways of doing it. You could either have it designed direct to the fixture or direct to the implant.
Mm,
But I guess for some users that can be quite risky because when you're printing, that connection area, it's very thin in some areas, and when you screw down
mm,
the healing collar, you can fracture basically. It's probably safer to base off your healing collar uh, off a temporary cylinder. So you basically cement the collar onto a temporary cylinder. That's
um,
probably a lot safer because
yeah,
your temporary cylinder is usually some sort of PEEK material
yeah.
or some sort of metal as well. So that's not going to break, or it's very hard for it to break. So
Mm,
that's what I would do, rather than actually having the whole thing
yeah,
printed.
yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you for answering that.
Yep.
Okay, next question. Question number 2. Isn't there going to be any irritation to the gingiva when 3D printed custom healing abutment is directly connected to the transition zone area? Because we must use, no, because we use the healing abutment at least for a month or more.
Yep. I mean, that's a really, really good question. And actually, my opinion is that you should definitely have that, any printed resin. Obviously, you should follow some sort of validated workflow. You don't just, chuck in any sort of resin, cure it in any sort of curing unit, and then expect that there won't be any inflammation. There will be inflammation. So you really should be following your manufacturer's instructions.
Mm,
If the manufacturer specifies a specific curing unit or curing units to, fully process that particular resin, then you should be using one of those curing units. You shouldn't be using, something off eBay or Amazon, for instance. So I think where you really need to just follow steps to make sure that you have the most biocompatible product at the end of the day. I
yeah.
think so. providing you are following some sort of validated or approved workflow, then the next step really is to polish these healing collars. They should be polished. You'll be using composite polishers, anything that you would use to polish composite resin, and then they can actually be polished to a very nice shine. So once they're polished, then it's actually quite fine. I don't experience any significant inflammation or irritation in these healing sites. No. Just like when in the analog or traditional method, we would have a temporary cylinder, and you'd actually flow or mold composite, packable composite onto that particular temporary cylinder. Now that is still resin. We're still comfortable using it, except now instead of using packing it in an analog fashion, we're actually printing it in advance. And then putting it in the mouth, and you actually get better rate of cure in one of these approved dental curing units than actually if you cure it in the mouth with your handheld light unit. So I actually feel that as long as you're following an approved workflow and you're polishing these printed composites very well, then actually there's no reason why you can't get a nice result.
I just wonder, is it okay to apply customized healing abutment in one stage surgery, like after implant placement, directly connect the custom healing abutment? Is it okay?
Well, I mean, I have personally done it myself. The implant system that I use is quite unique. It's called the trimatrix system. So actually the connection is designed that I can actually screw in a printed or milled restoration directly onto the fixture. So, I've definitely, for a number of times, actually placed printed immediate provisional restorations direct to the fixture, as long as they're polished and radio opaque, so you can see them on an X-ray. Then, in my opinion, I think it's fine.
You think polishing is really important?
Yeah, absolutely, it's critical. It's critical.
Yeah. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, question number 3. What do you think is the most ROI 3D printing work in your daily practice? If you're telling to the beginners who are considering buying a new 3D printer.
I think the biggest ROI has got to be splints, easily. I think for just general practices, certainly in Western countries, the lab fee for occlusal splints is quite high because the cost of labor is quite high. Whereas you could design a splint for free. Of course, I use the Medit Splints app all the time because it's so easy to use, and of course, it's free to use as well. And then your material costs for a splint is, very, very affordable. Like you're probably spending anywhere from, $5 to $15 material cost per splint. And then, as I said, the cost to design a splint on Medit is free. So when you compare that to, if you send it off to a lab and have it made, then the price difference is huge. So yeah, I think the easiest way to get immediate ROI from a 3D printer is actually splints. The other way of getting good return on investments is actually doing in-house clear aligner therapy, where you're basically printing models, you're thermoforming clear aligners on top of them. So kind of like Invisalign, but you're just doing everything in-house essentially. That is also another way of getting really good, return on investment from your particular setup.
Then how many dental lab technicians are there in your clinic?
None. No, I do actually most of the printing, but I do delegate a lot of the tasks like cutting of the aligners, polishing of crowns. Some of the small tasks I still dedicate or delegate to my supporting staff. But because I entered, I guess, 3D printing as a hobby, I still enjoy it. I still 3D print not just dental things, but things for all sorts of things, not dentally related. So I still enjoy it, but certainly most practices should be trying to teach their support staff, their assistants, how to do some of the smaller things like polishing crowns and cutting aligners and making mouth guards and all of that.
So all the work is done by yourself. Wow.
I would say a big portion of it, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
including the design. Yeah, I enjoy it, yeah.
Including the design.
Yeah, yeah.
Logical guide as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Wow. You must be
Yeah.
really busy.
Yeah, you could say that, yeah. Yeah.
Because one of the dentists who I know, he also does the designing at his
Mm.
clinic, and he's like going at home late night because he has to design the surgical guide and everything.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it really depends on, how many cases you take on and what
Uh,
type of cases. And
uh,
my rule essentially is that if I can't do it in 15 minutes, then I will generally get someone else to design it for me. So
ah,
I do actually make quite a lot of use of design services. So I'm a big proponent of design services, but sometimes it is quite tricky to find the right one. But yeah, my rule is that if I can't do it within 15 minutes,
ah,
then I'm sending it off to someone else to
yeah.
design. Yeah.
I think that's a clever idea. Wow.
Mm.
And what about, have you ever used the AI function in splints?
I have used the AI function in splints, but
That's not
that
bad,
being
right?
like it's not too bad. That being said, it's so easy to design splints on the Medit splints app, just step by step doing it, that I feel that you just have more control, more security just designing it yourself. Uh, I mean, it's a nice tool to have, but I think the step-by-step process is actually not that slow. You can still
Mm,
design a splint from start to finish
yeah,
well within 5 minutes. So
yeah.
yeah, it's very easy. Very easy, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we are at the last question. Question number 4. What is your opinion on using cheaper customer level printers compared to the more expensive dental 3D printers?
I think we have to be, I guess, realistic and practical when answering this question. Ultimately, it depends on where you are in the world. Some countries, like in Australia, we're quite strict on the hardware that we can use. I think other countries like Canada would also be quite strict as well. Whereas there will be other countries where it's quite relaxed. You can more or less use whatever you want, whenever you want, and get away with it. But my opinion is that if you're putting anything in the mouth, certainly for more, long periods of time, then you should really be following strict, approved and, I guess, uh, approved workflows that we know work. And usually these manufacturers have spent a lot of time developing these resins and a lot of time developing their hardware. And then, when let's say you use, their hardware and their resins, that for sure that if you follow the steps, according to their instructions, you're going to get a good result. Sometimes if you use a little bit of this, a little bit of that, kind of mix and match, workflows and steps from different companies, you can potentially get failures, and then you don't even know where something has gone wrong. So my opinion is that if you have the budget and you really want to do things the right way, then absolutely, I'm a big proponent of these dental specific hardware setups. Like Sprint Ray, Accurata, there's a lot, Sega, there's a lot of companies out there. Whereas if you, just want to, play a little bit, dip your toes in the water a little bit, then of course you can start with a cheaper setup. But my opinion is that sometimes you end up, you know, having a poorer experience of dental 3D printing that will put you off some of these more easier and more dental specific hardware options. So you've got to be a bit careful. Ultimately, you want to have a system which is fun to use and easy to use, because if it isn't, then you're not going to use it. And often that means that you have to spend a bit more, at least at the start, to have a proper setup. So yeah, it depends on a lot of things. When I first started, I was using your Frozens, your Anycubics, your consumer grade 3D printers. But nowadays, if you ask me, yeah, I would never go go back
Um,
and do that again. I just
yeah,
go straight to the dental specific 3D
yeah.
printers. But I guess in a way, because I had that experience, from the start, I knew kind of like what I was getting into. And then actually these dental 3D printers, sometimes I feel they sometimes spoil us a bit. They make things a bit too easy compared to the consumer level 3D printers. But yeah, it really depends on your budget, how much you want to spend, and also how easy you want your workflow to be. But if you have the budget, yeah, I'd go for something more expensive.
Okay, thank you for answering all the questions.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, that's all about it for today. So you'll be able to watch this webinar on our YouTube channel and Medit Academy. Thank you for being here, Dr. Andrew.
No problem. No problem.
Hope to see you next
Yeah.
time. Bye.
Bye.